A young black maid, pregnant and without support, returned to the mansion to beg for help from the man who abandoned her. When he was thrown out in front of everyone, she made one final revelation that made the freeze. The mansion was a symbol of wealth. Large columns, manicured gardens, and a gate that whispered, "Keep out," to anyone without an invitation. The man who owned it, Roberto, lived behind a perfectly curated facade. His days were meticulously planned. From morning business meetings in designer suits to evenings of expensive cigars and fine wine at exclusive parties, he knew how to show confidence. Dressed in tailored suits that fit him like armor, he wore his power on his sleeve, but there was something hollow about his eyes. Roberto's life was filled with servants who were, to him, almost invisible. They moved about the house, cleaning, cooking, making sure that his life was without flaw. One of them was Anna. She was young, quiet, and black, a detail that didn't go unnoticed among his guests, though they rarely spoke to her. She moved silently through the halls, her eyes always down, keeping her distance. She was efficient, attentive, and seemed almost part of the background. One evening, when the sun had already disappeared behind the hills and the house glowed with dim golden lights, Roberto felt the weight of his problems crushing down on him. The risky investments were threatening his fortune, and the potential loss of money was too much to bear. It wasn't just money, it was his image, his standing. Any sign of weakness could mean everything he built would crumble. Anna was there that evening, as she often was, cleaning the dining area while he drank in the living room. His glass was filled again and again until the lines between past and present began to blur. He could feel the anger in him, the helplessness. He saw Anna walk past, and for some reason, called her over. "Anna!" His voice slurred slightly, but he kept his composure. She turned, a bit startled. It was rare for him to address her directly. She walked over, wiping her hands on her apron, keeping her eyes lowered. "Yes, sir," she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sit down." He gestured to the chair across from him. She hesitated, but he insisted. "Sit." Anna sat, her back straight, unsure of what was coming. He looked at her for a long moment before speaking, his eyes unfocused. "You ever been betrayed, Anna?" he asked suddenly. She shook her head slowly, not sure what to say. He didn't wait for her response. "I trusted someone once, a woman," he said, bitterness in his tone. "She left me, took everything she could. You think you know someone, think you're safe, but then they just—" He snapped his fingers, and Anna flinched. She didn't know why he was telling her this, but she nodded, listening carefully. There was something vulnerable about him in that moment, something she hadn't seen before. The more he talked, the more he seemed to forget she was there at all. His words becoming mumbled, disjointed thoughts about betrayal and trust. There was silence for a while after that, with only the soft clink of his glass as he set it down on the table. He looked up at her, his eyes suddenly focused. "You think you understand, but you don't," he said quietly. "People like you don't understand what it means to lose everything." Anna didn't say anything. She could feel the tension in the room, the unspoken thoughts. She knew it was dangerous, staying there in his gaze, yet something held her in place. Roberto leaned closer, his voice dropping lower. "But I'll tell you, Anna, people like me, we can't afford to lose. Not ever." She nodded again, feeling the weight of his words. There was something almost pleading in his expression, like he wanted her to agree, to understand. For a moment she saw not the powerful, distant man, but someone fragile. It made her chest tighten, made her want to help. "Go," he said suddenly, his voice sharp. She stood quickly, almost knocking over the chair as she backed away, resuming her tasks, her hands trembling slightly. He watched her leave the room, and for a moment, he closed his eyes, letting the world fall away. In the days that followed, the distance between them felt different. Anna could still feel his gaze sometimes when she passed, a strange look that wasn't there before. One night, it happened. She didn't know if it was the alcohol or the desperation in his eyes that made her hesitate. They shared a closeness that felt inevitable, a crossing of a line that seemed almost impossible to avoid. And then, it was done. They both knew it was wrong, knew it couldn't happen again. Anna returned to her duties as though nothing had happened, and Roberto went on with his business, pushing the memory away, burying it under his responsibilities and problems. But then, Anna knew. She felt it in her body, the changes that couldn't be denied. She was pregnant. It terrified her, the realization of what this meant. How could she possibly tell Roberto? What would he do? Her mind spun with thoughts of losing everything: her job, her place in the world, any semblance of stability she had managed to hold on to. She waited, trying to gather her courage. Days passed, and then weeks. She knew she couldn't wait much longer. One evening, when she found him in his study, she approached him cautiously, her heart pounding. "Sir," she called softly. He looked up from his papers, his expression unreadable. "What is it?" he asked. I need to speak with you. It's important," she said, her voice trembling. He frowned, setting down his pen. What could possibly be so important? Anna took a deep breath, her hands shaking. I'm pregnant," she finally managed to say. There was a moment of silence. Roberto's eyes darkened, his expression shifting into something cold, distant. He stood up, his movements slow and deliberate. "You can't stay here," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Sir, please, she began, but he cut her off. "No, you knew this would happen," he said, his tone harsh. "I can't have this. Not now. You need to leave. I'll make arrangements. You'll get what's necessary, but you cannot stay here." Anna felt her stomach drop, the room spinning around her. She wanted to cry, to plead, but the look in his eyes told her it was useless. He had already made up his mind. She nodded, her throat tight, tears stinging her eyes. She turned and walked out of the room, her steps slow and heavy. The weight of her future pressed down on her, the uncertainty, the fear. She left the mansion the next morning, carrying nothing but a small suitcase and a heart full of dread for what was to come. Anna had nowhere to go. The only place she knew was the cramped house where she had grown up, with her mother and her younger brother. She hadn't spoken to her mother in months, not since she left to take the job at the mansion. It had been her chance to get out, to do something different, to earn money that could give her a future. Now, she had to return with nothing but shame and a child she wasn't prepared for. She walked slowly through the narrow streets of her neighborhood, her suitcase heavy in her hand, her heart heavier still. She reached the door of the small house she once called home. Taking a deep breath, she knocked. The door opened, and her mother stood there, her eyes widening in surprise. "Anna," her mother said, her voice a mix of shock and concern. "Hi, Mom," Anna replied, her voice breaking. Her mother's expression shifted, eyes narrowing as she took in the sight of her daughter. The weariness, the defeated look, the suitcase. "You're back." Her mother's tone was sharp, suspicion in her voice. "What happened? Why are you here?" Anna swallowed hard. I lost my job. I have nowhere else to go." She hesitated, then added, "I'm pregnant, Mom." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Her mother's eyes went cold. She shook her head, stepping back from the door. "I knew it," her mother said, her voice trembling with anger. "I warned you, Anna. I told you that job was trouble. And now look at you." Anna felt tears sting her eyes. "Please, Mom, I don't have anywhere else." Her mother shook her head. "You made your choice. You went and got yourself into this. You think you can just come back here and expect me to take care of you? I can't do it, Anna." Anna felt her heart sink. She had hoped, somehow, that her mother would understand, that she would help her. But instead, the door closed in her face, and Anna stood there, alone. She turned and walked away, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She spent the next few days moving from place to place, sleeping on friends' couches, in shelters, anywhere she could find. But as her pregnancy became more evident, people's attitudes changed. They looked at her differently, like she was some kind of burden. She reached out to her closest friend, Clara, someone she had always relied on. But even Clara hesitated, her expression filled with worry. "Anna, you know I love you, but I can't risk it," Clara said, her voice full of regret. "You know who he is. If he finds out I'm helping you, he could make my life hell too." Anna nodded, trying to understand, though it felt like her heart was breaking. She couldn't blame Clara. She knew what Roberto was capable of. He had power, influence. He could ruin anyone's life without even thinking twice about it. But it didn't make it hurt any less. Her options were dwindling fast. She tried to find work, any work, but every time she mentioned her name, there seemed to be a knowing look, a hesitation. It was as if Roberto's influence followed her everywhere, like a shadow she couldn't escape. She was desperate, running out of money, out of places to stay, out of hope. One day, she ran into an old coworker, someone who had worked with her at the mansion. She approached him, her voice hesitant. "Carlos, hey," she said, trying to sound casual. Carlos turned, and when he saw her, his eyes widened. "Anna," he said, looking uncomfortable. "What are you doing here?" "I've been trying to find work," she said. "I was hoping you might know of something." Carlos looked around nervously, then leaned in close. "You need to be careful, Anna," he whispered. "There are rumors going around. Roberto, he's told people things, bad things about you. That you're trouble, that you're trying to extort him. People believe it. No one wants to get involved with you." Anna felt like the ground had been pulled out from under her. She stared at Carlos, her heart pounding. "Why would he do that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Carlos shrugged, looking uneasy. "To protect himself, I guess. He's scared of what you might say, what you might do. He can't afford any scandals." Anna nodded, her throat tight. She thanked Carlos and walked away, her mind reeling. She understood now why no one would help her, why every door seemed to be closed. Roberto was making sure she had nowhere to turn, that she was isolated, powerless. The next few days were the darkest she had faced. She had no money, no home, no friends. She found herself sitting on a bench in a park, staring at the ground, the weight of her situation pressing down on her. She felt utterly defeated. She thought about giving up, about walking away from everything. She thought about the child growing inside her and wondered if she could even bring it into a world like this. But then she remembered Roberto's face, the way he had looked at her, as if she was nothing. The way he had dismissed her, thrown her away. She couldn't let him win. She couldn't let him take everything from her. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her child. Slowly, she stood up from the bench, her legs shaky but determined. She couldn't give up. Not now. Not like this. She needed to confront Roberto again. She needed to face him, to demand what she was owed. She didn't know what would happen, but she knew she had to try. Anna returned to the neighborhood where she had grown up, her steps slow and hesitant. The streets were narrow, lined with run-down buildings, and the people who once knew her looked at her differently now. Whispers followed her as she walked, and she could feel the judgment in their eyes. She kept her gaze down, focusing on her feet, trying to block out the murmurs that seemed to rise around her like an oppressive fog. She knocked on the door of her childhood home again, even though she knew what awaited her. When her mother opened the door, the scowl was already there. "What do you want now?" her mother asked, her voice sharp. "I need a place to stay, at least for a few nights," Anna said. Her voice was calm, but inside she was desperate. "Just until I figure things out." Her mother crossed her arms, shaking her head. "I already told you, Anna. You went off to that job, and now you come back with this." She glanced at Anna's growing belly with disdain. "You made your bed. Now lie in it." Anna didn't argue. There was no point. She turned away, her shoulders slumping, and walked back into the street. She tried not to cry, but the tears were there, just behind her eyes, threatening to spill. With nowhere to go, Anna sought out her only close friend, Clara. Clara had always been there for her, through everything. She was her lifeline, and Anna hoped, prayed, that she could be there once more. Clara lived a few streets away, in a modest apartment that smelled of old furniture and cheap incense. When Clara opened the door, she looked at Anna with surprise, then worry. "Anna, what's going on?" Clara asked, stepping aside to let her in. "I need help, Clara. I've got nowhere to go. My mom won't let me stay, and I lost my job." Anna paused, looking down, feeling ashamed. "And I'm pregnant." Clara's eyes widened, and she pulled Anna into a hug. "Oh, Anna, I'm so sorry." She held her tightly for a moment, but when she pulled back, there was a sadness in her eyes. "Can I stay here? Just for a while?" Anna asked. Clara bit her lip, looking torn. "I want to help you, Anna. I really do. But it's complicated. You know who he is. I've heard things. Roberto has power, and if he finds out I'm helping you, I could lose everything." "I can't risk that." Anna nodded, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "I understand," she said, though her voice cracked. Clara hugged her again, and for a moment, Anna let herself cry, her tears soaking into Clara's shoulder. "I'm so sorry," Clara whispered. Anna pulled away, wiping her face. "Don't be. It's not your fault," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She left Clara's apartment, feeling more alone than ever. Over the next week, Anna tried everything she could think of to get by. She went to shelters, slept on park benches when no beds were available, and used what little money she had to buy food. She tried to find work, but everywhere she went, she was turned away. There was always an excuse. a polite smile that didn't reach their eyes. And now, she understood why. Roberto had poisoned her name. He had made sure that she was untouchable, that no one would hire her or help her. She felt his influence like a shadow that she couldn't shake off, always there, blocking her way. She had no chance, not as long as he had the power to keep her down. She was sitting in a shelter one afternoon, the noise of people around her fading into the background, when she spotted Carlos. He was someone she had worked with back at the mansion, a face from a past that seemed like a lifetime ago. "Carlos," she called, her voice unsure. He looked up, startled, and then frowned when he recognized her. "Anna, what are you doing here?" he asked, looking uneasy. I've been trying to find work. I was hoping maybe you knew of something," she said, her words hesitant. Carlos glanced around, then stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Anna, you need to leave this place. There are things being said about you. Roberto's been talking. He's saying that you're dangerous, that you're trying to extort him. No one wants anything to do with you." Anna's stomach twisted. She had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed was like a punch to the gut. "Why would he do that?" she whispered. Carlos sighed, looking pained. "He's protecting himself. You're a threat to his reputation. He can't afford any scandals, so he's making sure no one helps you." Anna felt her throat tighten, her heart pounding. "Thank you, Carlos," she said, her voice shaking. She turned away, her legs feeling like they might give out beneath her. Later that evening, Anna found herself sitting on a bench in a small park. The air was cool, and she could hear children playing somewhere in the distance, their laughter mixing with the chirping of birds. She stared at the ground, her hands resting on her belly. Everything seemed so hopeless. She had tried everything she could think of, and nothing had worked. She had nowhere left to go, no one to turn to. The thought crossed her mind then, clear and sharp. Maybe it would be easier to just give up, to walk away, leave everything behind, to end it all. She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face, her breath hitching in her throat. But then she felt it, a small flutter inside her, just below her ribs. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling it again. A gentle, tiny movement. Her child, her baby, who hadn't even been born yet but was already fighting, already living. Anna wiped her tears away, her breath shaky. She couldn't give up. Not now, not when she had someone else to fight for. She needed to face Roberto, to make him understand what he had done to her, to their child. She didn't know what she would do, or how she would do it, but she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't let him win. Slowly, she stood up from the bench, her legs still trembling, but her resolve stronger than it had been in weeks. She couldn't let him take everything from her. She had to confront him again. She had to find a way to make him see her, to make him understand that she wasn't going to disappear, not without a fight. Anna stood at the edge of Roberto's mansion, her heart pounding in her chest. The gate was as imposing as she remembered, iron bars that seemed to stretch to the sky. She knew this was a risk. She knew it could end badly, but she didn't care anymore. She had nothing to lose. She needed Roberto to hear her. She needed him to understand what he had done to her and to their child. Taking a deep breath, she approached the gate. The guard at the entrance looked at her, his eyes narrowing. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice laced with suspicion. "I need to speak to Roberto," Anna said, her voice firm despite the fear that twisted in her stomach. The guard frowned, shaking his head. "You can't be here. You need to leave," he said. "Please," she pleaded. "I need to speak with him. It's important." The guard moved closer, his hand on his radio. "You need to leave now, or I'll call the police." Anna felt panic rising, but she swallowed it down. She couldn't leave. Not now. Not without trying. She pushed past the guard, her movements frantic. "Please, just let me see him. Just for a minute," she cried, her voice desperate. The guard grabbed her arm, trying to pull her back, but Anna struggled, her heart pounding. There was commotion then, voices from the front door of the mansion. Anna looked up and saw Roberto standing there, his face darkening as he saw her. He stepped forward, waving the guard off. "Let her go," Roberto said, his voice cold. The guard released her, and Anna stumbled forward, her eyes locking with Roberto's. There was a moment of silence, a tension so thick it felt suffocating. "What are you doing here, Anna?" Roberto asked, his voice sharp, each word cutting into her. "I need to talk to you," Anna said, her voice trembling but determined. "I need help, Roberto. You know why I'm here." Roberto's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing. I thought I made it clear. Anna, you are not welcome here. You need to leave. Anna shook her head, taking a step closer. Please, Roberto. I need money. I can't find work. No one will hire me because of what you've been saying. I have nowhere to go. Roberto laughed, a cold, humorless sound. And you think that's my problem? He asked, his voice dripping with disdain. You think I owe you anything? Anna felt tears welling in her eyes, her chest tight. She took another step forward, her voice breaking. I'm carrying your child, Roberto. You owe me that much. Please, just help me. Even a little. Roberto's expression darkened, his eyes flashing with anger. He stepped closer, his voice low, almost a growl. I don't owe you anything, Anna. You were a mistake I'm trying to forget. You think you can come here? Make demands? I won't let you ruin me. Anna's tears spilled over, her hands shaking. She could feel the eyes of the other staff on her. Maids, gardeners, everyone was watching. She was being humiliated in front of them all, but she couldn't back down. Not now. Roberto, please, I'm begging you, she said, her voice cracking, the desperation plain in every word. Roberto turned away from her, waving his hand dismissively. You need to leave, now. I'm done with this conversation. Anna felt something snap inside her then. She couldn't let it end like this. She had nothing left to lose. She stepped forward again, her voice rising, breaking. You can't just do this to me, to your child. You can't just throw us away like we're nothing, she shouted, her voice echoing across the courtyard. Roberto stopped, turning back to her, his face flushed with anger. Get her out of here, he said to the guards, his voice cold, dismissive. I don't want to see her again. The guards moved towards her, grabbing her arms, pulling her away. Anna struggled, her voice raw with desperation. Roberto, please, please, just help me, she cried, her voice breaking, tears streaming down her face. But Roberto turned away, walking back into the mansion without another word. Anna was dragged to the gate, the guards pushing her outside, letting her stumble onto the pavement. She fell to her knees, her chest heaving with sobs, her vision blurred with tears. The gate closed behind her with a heavy clang, and she was left there, alone, the cold iron bars separating her from everything she had hoped for. She knelt there for a long time, her body trembling, the weight of the rejection pressing down on her. She felt like she had nothing left. She had come here with hope, with determination, and she had been thrown away, discarded like she was nothing. She didn't know how she would get up from this. She didn't know how she could keep going. But as she knelt there, her hands resting on her belly, she felt that small flutter again, the tiny reminder that she wasn't alone. She had her baby. She had a reason to keep fighting. Slowly, she wiped her tears, her breath shaky. She stood up, her legs weak, but she stood. She turned away from the mansion, her steps slow but steady. She didn't know where she was going, but she knew she couldn't give up. Not now. Not yet. She walked away from Roberto's mansion, her heart heavy, her mind filled with uncertainty. She had nothing left, no money, no home, no support, but she had her child, and for that, she would keep going. She would find a way. She had to. Anna woke up the next morning in a small room at a women's shelter. The bed was hard, the blanket thin, and the air around her cold. She rubbed her eyes, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on her. The previous day's confrontation with Roberto played again and again in her head. The anger in his voice, the way he had dismissed her like she was worthless. She swallowed the lump in her throat and slowly stood up, her body sore and tired. Today, she needed to try again. She had no other choice. Anna spent the next few days knocking on doors, asking for work. She went from shop to shop, looking for anything, cleaning, waitressing, anything that could help her get by. But everywhere she went, she received the same answer. Some of them were kind, others blunt, but it was always the same. No. She had even gone back to a diner she used to work at before she got the job at Roberto's mansion. It was small, with sticky tables and cracked vinyl seats, but she remembered the manager, an older woman named Marta, who used to smile and give her extra tips when business was good. Anna waited by the counter, her heart pounding, hoping Marta would remember her, hoping she could get some mercy. When Marta finally appeared, her smile faltered when she saw Anna. There was hesitation in her eyes, a quick glance at Anna's growing belly before she frowned. Anna, it's been a while, Marta said, her voice stiff. Hi, Marta, Anna said, her voice barely above a whisper. I I was hoping you might have some work for me. Anything, really." Marta shifted her weight, her eyes glancing around the empty diner. "I heard things." "Anna," she said, her tone uncomfortable. "People talk. They say you've been causing trouble." Anna's heart sank. She swallowed, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's not true. Please, Marta, I need this job. I need something." Marta shook her head, her eyes avoiding Anna's. "I can't help you. I'm sorry, but I have a business to run. I can't take risks, not with what people are saying." Anna nodded, her throat tight, tears stinging her eyes. She turned and walked out of the diner, her vision blurred with tears. She walked the streets, unsure where to go, unsure what to do. The weight of everything felt unbearable. The rumors Roberto had spread were like a poison, infecting everything. She knew why he had done it. He was afraid she would speak out, that she would expose him. He had power, and he wasn't afraid to use it to crush her. And it was working. Everywhere she went, the doors were closed before she could even knock. Every possibility, every hope, taken from her before she could even try. Anna wandered through the streets, her steps heavy. She had reached out to her old co-workers, people she had worked with back at the mansion, hoping they might help her, but the conversations had all gone the same way. "Anna, you know I can't get involved," they had said, their voices apologetic but their eyes avoiding hers. "He's too powerful. I can't risk my job, my family. I'm sorry." She had tried to keep herself together, to understand, but it was becoming harder and harder. The feeling of helplessness grew with each rejection, each door that was slammed in her face. She couldn't help but feel like the walls were closing in around her, her options narrowing until there was nowhere left to go. One day, Anna found herself in the bathroom of a small convenience store. She locked the door, the cold tiles under her bare feet as she stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her face was pale, her eyes red from crying. She felt exhausted, her body weak, her spirit broken. She sat on the floor, her back against the wall, her hands resting on her belly. Tears streamed down her face, her chest tight with the weight of everything. She had fought so hard, tried so hard, and still, it felt like there was nothing left. She felt empty, defeated. The sound of someone knocking on the door pulled her from her thoughts, and she wiped her face, taking a deep breath. She stood up slowly, her legs shaky, and unlocked the door, stepping back into the cold, unforgiving world. She wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Anna walked through the neighborhood, her steps slow and heavy, her mind filled with thoughts of what she needed to do next. She couldn't keep trying the same thing. She needed to think of something else, a different approach. She had to fight back. She had to find a way to survive, for herself and for her child. She found herself at the small park she had sat in weeks ago, her heart heavy. She remembered that feeling of wanting to give up, a feeling like there was no hope left. She felt it again now, the despair, the hopelessness. But just like before, she placed her hand on her belly, feeling that small flutter, and she knew she couldn't give up. Not yet. She thought about Roberto, about everything he had done to her. He had taken everything from her, used his power to ruin her life, but she couldn't let him win. She couldn't let him destroy her. She had to keep fighting. She had to keep going, no matter what. Anna took a deep breath, her eyes focused on the horizon. She needed to confront him, one last time. She needed to make him see that she wasn't going to disappear, that she wasn't going to let him take everything from her. She needed to find a way to make him understand that she was still here, still fighting. She stood up, her legs feeling stronger than they had in weeks. She turned away from the park, her steps steady. She didn't know what she would do or how she would do it, but she knew one thing. She had to try. She couldn't give up. Not now. Not ever. Anna stood at the entrance of the mansion once more. She had come back, and this time, she didn't care about the consequences. She wasn't going to leave until she had her say, until Roberto knew that she wouldn't vanish quietly, that she wouldn't be broken by him. She knew it might end with her being arrested, or worse, but she was beyond fear now. She had nothing left but her determination and her child. She approached the gate, her heart pounding, but her expression was calm, resolved. The same guard was there, and he recognized her immediately, his face hardening. "You again?" the guard said, his voice rough. "I told you, you're not allowed here." Anna didn't flinch. She looked him in the eye, her voice steady. "I'm not leaving until I speak to Roberto. I don't care what you have to do, but I'm not leaving." The guard frowned, looking frustrated. He glanced back toward the mansion, then back at Anna. "I told you last time, if you don't leave, I'm calling the police." "Call them," Anna said, her voice unwavering. "I don't care. I'll wait right here." The guard hesitated, then pulled out his radio, speaking into it. Anna waited, her breath steady. She wasn't going to run this time. She wasn't going to let them scare her away. After a few minutes, the front doors of the mansion opened, and Roberto appeared. He walked towards the gate, his expression dark and angry. When he reached her, he stopped, his eyes narrowed. "What do you think you're doing here?" Roberto asked, his voice low, dripping with annoyance. Anna stepped closer to the gate, her hands gripping the bars. "I came to tell you the truth, Roberto. I'm done hiding. I'm done being afraid of you." Roberto's eyes flashed with anger. He stepped closer, his voice a harsh whisper. "You think you can come here and make demands? You think anyone is going to listen to you? You're nothing, Anna." Anna felt the sting of his words, but she didn't back down. She took a deep breath, her voice trembling but strong. "I may be nothing to you, but I'm not going to be nothing to my child. You can spread all the lies you want, but I'm not going to disappear. You won't break me." Roberto shook his head, his expression one of disbelief. "You really think anyone will care? That anyone will believe you? You're just making this harder for yourself." Anna raised her voice then, her words ringing out, filled with all the pain and anger she had held back for so long. "I don't care if they believe me, Roberto. I'm done letting you control me. You used me, and now you're trying to destroy me. But I won't let you. Not anymore." Roberto took a step back, his face pale with rage. He looked around, realizing that the staff had gathered at a distance, watching the confrontation. The gardener, the maids, even the cook, all of them were there, their eyes wide, their faces a mix of shock and curiosity. Roberto turned back to Anna, his voice low and threatening. "You're making a mistake." Anna looked past him, her eyes meeting those of the staff. She spoke louder, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "He doesn't care about anyone but himself. He'll destroy anyone who threatens his perfect little world. He did it to me, and he'll do it to anyone who crosses him." There was a murmur among the staff, a shifting of eyes, nervous glances exchanged. Roberto turned, glaring at them, his face twisted with anger. "Get back to work, all of you," he shouted, his voice echoing. The staff hesitated, then slowly began to disperse, their eyes lingering on Anna before they turned away. Roberto turned back to Anna, his face flushed. He stepped closer to the gate, his voice a furious whisper. "You think you've won something here today? You haven't. You're done, Anna. I'll make sure of it." Anna held his gaze, her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. "You can try, Roberto, but I'm not afraid of you anymore." Roberto stared at her for a long moment, then turned away, walking back towards the mansion without another word. The gate clanged shut behind him, and Anna was left standing there, her heart pounding, her breath coming in shaky gasps. She had said what she came to say. She had stood up to him, and she hadn't backed down. She had nothing left, but at least she had her voice. At least she had told the truth. She wiped her tears, her body trembling, and slowly turned away from the mansion. The guards watched her, but they didn't move to stop her this time. She walked away, her steps slow but steady, her head held high. She felt lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She didn't know what would happen next. She didn't know if she would find a way to survive, if she would be able to take care of her child, but she knew one thing: she wasn't afraid anymore. Anna walked through the streets, her heart filled with both fear and hope. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a chance. She had faced Roberto, and she had survived. She had told her truth, and no one could take that away from her. She reached the park again, the same place where she had once thought of giving up. She sat down on the bench, her hand resting on her belly, feeling the small flutter of her child. She closed her eyes, letting the tears fall, not of despair this time, but of relief. She had fought back. She had stood her ground. She had lost almost everything, but she still had herself. She still had her child, and that was enough. Anna returned to her old neighborhood, her steps slow but purposeful. The streets looked the same as always, but something had changed inside her. She still had no idea how she was going to make it through, but she wasn't paralyzed by fear anymore. She felt a determination that was different from before. She had faced Roberto, and although he hadn't given her anything, she had taken something back: her voice, her courage. The house she grew up in stood just ahead, and she hesitated for a moment, staring at the old, faded paint on the front door. The last time she'd been here, her mother had sent her away, her voice sharp and unforgiving. Anna knew she couldn't stay, but she still needed to face her mother one more time. She walked up to the door and knocked. The seconds that passed felt like hours, and then the door opened, revealing her mother. The same hard look was there, the same skepticism in her eyes. "Anna?" Her mother's voice was cold. "Hi, Mom," Anna said quietly. She took a breath, trying to steady her voice. I just wanted to say goodbye. I'm leaving. I don't know where I'm going yet, but I'm not coming back." Her mother's eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms. "You came all the way here to tell me that?" Anna nodded, her voice steady. "I just wanted you to know. I wanted you to understand that I'm not running anymore. I faced Roberto, and I told him the truth. I'm not scared of him anymore, and I'm not scared of what's ahead." Her mother looked at her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she sighed, her shoulders relaxing slightly. "You always were stubborn, Anna, just like your father." Anna smiled faintly, a sad smile. "Maybe, but I'm going to make it, Mom, somehow. I have to, for my child." Her mother's eyes flickered to Anna's belly, and for the first time, there was something softer there, a hint of something like regret. She didn't say anything, but Anna saw it, and it gave her a small bit of comfort. "Take care of yourself, Anna," her mother finally said, her voice softer. "I mean it." Anna nodded. "I will." She turned away, her heart feeling heavy but also lighter in some strange way. She walked away from the house, not looking back. She knew she couldn't change her mother's mind or make her accept her, but at least she had said what she needed to say. Anna spent the next few days walking through the city, looking for work in places Roberto's influence wouldn't reach. She avoided the high-end neighborhoods, the businesses where people would know his name. She went to smaller places that were far away from the world she had once been a part of. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she wasn't going to give up. One morning, as she was walking down a street she hadn't been to before, she saw a small cafe. It was modest, with a faded sign above the door and tables out front. There was something welcoming about it, something that made Anna pause. She took a breath and walked inside, her heart pounding. The cafe was quiet, the smell of fresh coffee filling the air. Behind the counter was a middle-aged woman, her face kind, her eyes tired but friendly. She looked up as Anna entered, giving her a small smile. "Can I help you?" the woman asked, her voice warm. Anna stepped closer, her hands trembling slightly. "I was wondering if you might need any help. I'm looking for work. I can clean, serve tables, anything you need." The woman studied her for a moment, her eyes moving to Anna's belly, her expression thoughtful. "It's not much pay," she said finally, "but I could use someone to help clean up in the mornings, maybe serve a few tables during the lunch rush." Anna's heart skipped a beat. "I'd be grateful for anything," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you." The woman smiled, nodding. "I'm Teresa," she said, extending her hand. "You can start tomorrow if you'd like." Anna took her hand, her own shaking slightly. "Thank you, Teresa. You have no idea how much this means to me." Teresa looked at her, her eyes kind. "I think I do. You look like you've been through a lot. Everyone deserves a chance, don't they?" Anna nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Yes, thank you." The next morning, Anna arrived at the cafe early, her heart pounding with both nerves and hope. Teresa showed her around, introducing her to the routine, and Anna threw herself into the work, scrubbing floors, wiping tables, doing everything she could to prove that she belonged there. It wasn't glamorous, and it wasn't easy, but it was something. It was a step forward. The other staff were friendly, if a bit reserved at first, but Anna didn't mind. She worked hard, her mind focused on one thing: survival. She needed to make this work, for herself and for her baby. Slowly, she began to find a rhythm, the work giving her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in a long time. One afternoon, as the cafe was winding down after the lunch rush, Teresa called Anna over. She handed her a cup of tea, nodding towards one of the empty tables. "Sit for a minute, Anna. You've earned it," Teresa said, her voice kind. Anna hesitated, then nodded, taking a seat. She took a sip of the tea, the warmth spreading through her. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to relax, even if just for a moment. Teresa sat across from her, her eyes gentle. "You're doing good work, Anna. I just wanted you to know that. Anna smiled, her eyes filling with tears. "Thank you. I really appreciate it." Teresa reached across the table, giving Anna's hand a gentle squeeze. "You're stronger than you think. Just remember that." Anna nodded, her heart swelling with emotion. She looked out the window, the sunlight streaming in, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope. It was small, fragile, but it was there. She still had a long way to go, but she was moving forward. She was surviving, and that was enough for now. She stood up, taking a deep breath, her hand resting on her belly. She looked down at her child, a small smile playing on her lips. "We're going to be okay," she whispered, her voice filled with determination. "We're going to be just fine." The first few days at the cafe were exhausting, but Anna didn't mind. She worked long hours, scrubbing floors, washing dishes, serving tables, all without a single complaint. Every morning she would arrive before the sun was up, sweeping the cafe before customers arrived. It was hard work, but it was real. It was her own, and every minute spent there gave her a small piece of her dignity back. Her co-workers were initially hesitant around her. They seemed unsure, maybe even wary. But Teresa, the owner, treated her like one of their own, and soon the rest of the staff followed her lead. There was Clara, a young girl who worked part-time, and Pedro, who took care of deliveries and maintenance. Clara would sometimes smile at Anna, a kind of recognition of their shared struggles, and it made Anna feel less alone. On her fourth day, Clara approached Anna with a timid smile while they were cleaning up after the lunch crowd. "Hey, Anna, do you want to join us after work? We're all going to get some sandwiches at the food cart down the street," Clara asked, her voice soft, almost unsure of what Anna's reaction would be. Anna paused, looking at Clara, her heart warming at the unexpected invitation. She smiled, nodding. "Yeah, I'd like that. Thank you." After work, they all walked together to the food cart. The evening air cool, the streets busy with people heading home. They sat at a small table near the cart, laughing, talking. For a moment, Anna forgot everything else. Roberto, the pain, the fear. She let herself be in that moment, surrounded by people who were kind, who treated her like she mattered. She felt a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time, a small sense of belonging. The days began to blend together, and slowly, Anna started to rebuild her life. She managed to save a little bit of money each week, storing it carefully in an old tin box Teresa had given her. It wasn't much, but it was something, and it made Anna feel like she was working toward a future. She needed to move forward, no matter how slowly. One day, after her shift ended, Teresa pulled her aside. Her face was soft, her eyes kind as always. "Anna, I've got something for you," Teresa said, holding out a key. "There's a small room in the back, near the storage area. It's not much, but it's a place to stay until you get on your feet." Anna stared at the key, her eyes filling with tears. "Teresa, I don't know what to say." "Thank you," Teresa smiled, giving Anna a gentle pat on the shoulder. "You've earned it, Anna. You're a hard worker, and you deserve a break." That night, Anna moved her few belongings into the small room at the back of the cafe. It was simple, a narrow bed, a small dresser, and a tiny window that let in a sliver of light. But it was her own. It was a place where she could rest without fear, without wondering where she would sleep the next night. She sat on the bed, running her hands over her growing belly, feeling the small flutters of her baby moving inside her. "We're okay now," she whispered, her voice soft, her heart filled with a mixture of relief and hope. "We're going to be okay." The next day, Anna was working at the counter when a young mother walked in, her toddler trailing behind her, his hand wrapped around hers. Anna greeted them with a smile, showing them to a table by the window. She took their order, and as she brought them their food, she watched as the mother spoke gently to her child, the little boy giggling as she wiped his face with a napkin. Anna's chest tightened, watching them, a lump forming in her throat. She wondered if she would be able to do that someday, to sit at a table with her child, laughing, without fear or worry. She wanted that. She wanted to be able to give her child a life where they could smile, where they could feel safe and loved. It was what kept her going, what made her wake up every morning and face whatever challenges came her way. Later that day, Clara came up to Anna while they were cleaning up. She held out a small box wrapped in simple brown paper, her face lighting up with a shy smile. "What's this?" Anna asked, taking the box, her heart skipping a beat. "It's just a little something," Clara said, her voice soft. "For the baby. I saw it at the market, And I thought of you. Anna opened the box, her eyes widening when she saw what was inside. A small, knitted blanket, soft and warm, the edges decorated with tiny yellow flowers. She felt tears welling in her eyes, her throat tightening. "Clara, this is beautiful," Anna said, her voice breaking. "Thank you." Clara smiled, her eyes shining. "I thought you might need it." Anna hugged Clara, her chest aching with emotion. "Thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me." The days turned into weeks, and Anna continued working at the cafe, saving every cent she could. She started to feel a sense of stability, a feeling she hadn't had since before Roberto had turned her world upside down. She knew she wasn't where she wanted to be yet, but she was on her way. She found a small apartment, just a single room, but it was hers. It took all the money she had saved, but she signed the lease, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. It was a fresh start, a place where she could build a life for her child, where they could be safe, away from the shadows of her past. On her first night in her new home, Anna sat on the floor, her back against the wall, the tiny knitted blanket Clara had given her spread across her lap. She ran her fingers over the soft fabric, tears filling her eyes. "We're home now," she whispered, her voice trembling. "This is our home." She knew it wouldn't be easy. She knew there would still be struggles ahead, still days when she would feel like giving up. But she also knew that she was stronger than she had ever been before. She had faced Roberto, she had faced the world, and she had survived. She had found a way to keep going, to keep fighting. She looked out the small window, the lights of the city flickering in the distance. She knew there was still so much to do, still so many challenges to face. But she also knew that she wasn't alone. She had her child, and she had hope, and that was enough. Anna placed her hand on her belly, feeling the gentle movements of her baby. She smiled, a small but genuine smile, her heart filled with determination. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. "We're going to make it." Time moved forward, and with it, Anna's life began to take on a new shape. The small apartment had become her sanctuary, a place where she could breathe, where she could think about the future without being haunted by the past. It was a simple space, just one room with a tiny kitchen and a bed pushed against the far wall. But it was her own. It was more than she had dared to hope for not so long ago. Anna woke up early every morning, her body adjusting to the rhythm of working at the cafe. Her belly had grown, and each day brought new sensations, new reminders of the life growing inside her. She could feel the kicks now, the tiny movements that made her smile even on the hardest days. There were moments when fear would creep back in, moments when she wondered how she would provide for her baby, how she would manage on her own. But every time, she would place her hand on her belly, feeling her baby move, and the fear would fade, replaced by something stronger. She had survived everything life had thrown at her so far, and she would survive this too. At the cafe, things had changed as well. Anna was no longer the quiet new girl. She was part of the team. Clara and Pedro had become friends, and even some of the regular customers knew her by name now. There was an older man, Mr. Oliveira, who came in every morning for coffee. He would always ask Anna about her baby, offering her words of encouragement, and she found herself looking forward to their small conversations. One morning, as she poured Mr. Oliveira his usual coffee, he smiled at her, his eyes kind. "You're looking strong today, Anna," he said. "That baby of yours is lucky to have you." Anna smiled, her heart warming at his words. "Thank you, Mr. Oliveira. I hope I can be the mother my child deserves." Mr. Oliveira nodded, his smile gentle. "You will be. I can see it in you. You've got the strength of a warrior." Anna laughed softly, her eyes glistening. "I don't feel like a warrior most days, but I try." He raised his coffee cup in a mock toast. "That's all any of us can do." Later that afternoon, as the cafe grew quieter, Clara approached Anna with a hesitant smile. She had a paper bag in her hands, which she held out to Anna. "I got you something," Clara said, her voice soft, her eyes nervous. Anna took the bag, her heart pounding. She opened it to find a small pair of baby shoes inside, soft and tiny, a pale blue color. Tears filled her eyes, and she looked at Clara, her chest aching with emotion. "Clara, these are beautiful," Anna said, her voice breaking. "Thank you so much." Clara shrugged, her cheeks turning pink. "I thought you might need them. I saw them in the store and thought of you." Anna pulled Clara into a hug, her heart full. "You've been so kind to me. I don't know how I'll ever repay you." Clara smiled as they pulled apart, her eyes shining. "You don't need to repay me, Anna. You're family now." That word, family, it meant everything. Anna had lost so much, but she had gained something else. She had found people who cared about her, people who stood by her. It wasn't the family she had been born into, but it was the family she had chosen, and that was just as important. The months continued to pass, and soon, the day came when Anna had to leave the cafe for a while. The baby was due soon, and her body was tired, her movements slow. Teresa insisted that Anna take time off, that she rest and prepare for what was coming. Anna had saved enough money to get by for a few weeks, and though she was nervous about not working, she knew she needed the rest. The night before her last shift, Teresa gathered the whole staff together after the cafe closed. She had baked a cake, and the small group stood around the counter, laughing and talking as they shared slices. Teresa raised a glass, her eyes meeting Anna's. "To Anna," Teresa said, her voice filled with warmth, "you've been an incredible part of this team, and we can't wait to meet that little one of yours. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met, and I know you're going to be an amazing mother." Anna felt tears fill her eyes, her throat tight. She looked around at the faces of her friends, people who had taken her in, who had given her a place when she had nowhere else to go. "Thank you all," she said, her voice trembling. "You've been my family when I had nothing. I don't know what I would have done without you." The next morning, Anna woke up in her small apartment, the sunlight streaming through the window, warming the room. She felt a calmness she hadn't felt in a long time. Today, she didn't have to worry about running, about surviving. Today, she could just be. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the gentle movements of her baby, and she smiled. The weeks passed slowly, each day bringing her closer to the moment she had both feared and anticipated. When the day finally came, it was early morning, the sky just beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn. Anna woke up to the sharp pains, and she knew it was time. She had called Clara, her voice shaky, and Clara had come right away, helping her into the car, her hands steady and reassuring. The hospital room was quiet, the lights dim, and Anna felt a mix of fear and excitement as she lay there, her body aching, her heart pounding. The hours felt like an eternity, each moment stretching into the next, the pain coming in waves. Clara stayed by her side the whole time, her hand holding Anna's, her voice soft and comforting. And then, finally, it was over. The cries of her baby filled the room, and Anna felt tears spill down her cheeks, her heart swelling with love, with relief. The nurse placed the baby in her arms, and Anna looked down, her breath catching in her throat. A boy. He was small, his skin soft, his tiny fingers curling around her thumb. Anna smiled, her tears falling freely, her heart full to bursting. "Hi, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm your mama, and I promise, I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to give you everything I can." Clara sat beside her, her eyes filled with tears as she looked at the baby. "He's beautiful, Anna." Anna nodded, her eyes never leaving her son. "He is," she said, her voice filled with wonder. In that moment, Anna felt something shift inside her. All the fear, all the pain, all the struggles she had faced, they all seemed to fade, replaced by a love so strong it took her breath away. She had fought so hard to get here, to this moment, and it was all worth it. Every tear, every hardship, every moment of doubt, it had all led her here, to her son. She looked out the window, the sun now rising, bathing the room in a soft, golden light. She knew the road ahead would still be difficult. She knew there would be challenges, days when she would feel overwhelmed. But she also knew that she was stronger than she had ever imagined. She had faced everything the world had thrown at her, and she had survived. And now, she had her son, her beautiful boy, and together, they would face whatever came next. Anna looked down at her son, her heart filled with love, her voice soft as she whispered to him. "We're going to be okay," she said. "No matter what happens, we're going to be okay." And for the first time in a long time, Anna believed it. She had found her courage, her strength, and her hope. She had found her family, and that was enough.